Oh, you caught me. I was muting the Zoom classroom. Hi, surprise! It's a Wednesday night, and this is a beginning ham radio class. I'm your instructor, Gary. A ham radio call sign, Whiskey 4 Echo Echo Yankee, we have been going along for a number of weeks now, covering material that we find in this book. This is the book that we've been using, the American Radio Relay League License Manual for the Technician Class. That's the beginning amateur radio license in the U.S., 5th edition. That's the current one of this. And we're up to Chapter 7. So, yeah, a little bit of housekeeping to get us started. Go ahead and take the laptop if you would, Marion. So this is our schedule. Tonight, we're going to be going over Chapter 7, Licensing Regulations. Next week, we'll do Chapter 8, Operating Regulations. Then the following, Chapter 9, Safety, the last chapter in the book, but maybe the most important. And we will take a practice test together. I'll put together a 35-question multiple choice practice test. You'll grade your own paper. You don't have to share, but we'll see how we're doing. And then optional, if you want to come back on November the 5th, we'll take 2 more practice tests together. So that's the plan. What I want you to do is to check in with your volunteer examiner team at your area. If you don't have one, you can use these URLs to find a club in your area or to find an amateur radio exam. This is organized by the American Radio Relay League, these URLs. Or other VECs give the tests. You can go to hamstudy.org/sessions and find test sessions going on in your area, or even online if there's nothing going on in your area. But what I want you to do is to schedule when you're going to take your test. Now, we were having a little discussion. The federal government is shut down at the moment, and the FCC is not processing exams or new applications at the moment. Also, I don't think their website is fully functional, because one of the things that I was going to have you do before you even go to take your test is to obtain an FRN number. It's a federal registry number for the FCC. It used to be you could use your Social Security number and then they would give you an FRN number. Now they ask you to get the FRN number ahead of time. Come back to me just for a second if you would, Marion. So check with your volunteer examiner team and see what their guidance is. I know the American Radio Relay League has said officially that they will continue to give exams. And that if you go and pass your test, they will give you a certificate of successful completion of the exam that says you passed. If you have an FRN number, great. They'll put it in their processing system for when the government comes back. If you don't have an FRN number, and this is something, it's going to be a team-by-team thing, I think they'll give you the certificate of successful completion, and then they'll wait. And when the government starts again, they'll want you to get an FRN number and then let them know what that is by email or somehow, and they'll marry everything together and then be able to send it on to the FCC. But each team is going to have their own guidance, and I can't know what everybody is going to be doing. But that's the general practice, I think, that most are going on. So practice tests, well, as I mentioned, we're going to be taking practice tests together, and you can also begin to start taking practice tests, even though we've got some chapters yet to come. Here's the ARRL exam review website. If you take the laptop, please. There we are. There's the URL. It's free. You do sign up for a free account with your email. That's only so that you can keep track of how you're doing. It'll score how many you've passed and how many you've not passed, and give you some ideas. The beauty of this site is it's keyed to our book. So when you go to look at the results of a practice test, it'll tell you where to find more information, the page and the section number in our book. So it's really well organized. We want you to get ready. Test is coming, and you all can do it. All right, let's get going. Chapter 7, Licensing Regulations. We're going to go through all 4 sections. And then we're going to take a 5-minute break, get up and move around, and then we'll see what we can do with some high-frequency radio. We'll listen to some signals and maybe see if we can make a contact. So let's see what we can do. So amateur radio, licensing terms is the first section. Amateur radio, know that it's an official class of service as designated by the FCC. It's not business band radio, it's non-commercial voluntary communications. And it's communications by people who are interested in radio technique solely with a personal aim and without, I love this word, pecuniary interest. It means money. You can't make money from your ham radio license. You can't pass messages and be paid for it. Another thing about amateur radio, it's an international hobby. I say it's the best hobby in the world because our radio signals go out into the world, and so it enhances international goodwill. So you thought radio was a technical hobby, but I want you to know that it contributes to the advancement of the radio art. You're an artiste when you get your license and get on the air, and this is direct from the Communications Act. It contributes to the advancement of the radio art. So rules and regulations for amateur radio are found in Part 97 of the FCC's rules. That's where it sets the frequency bands, the color chart that we have, gives the privileges for the different license classes, talks about how amateur radio licenses are issued, including special event and vanity call signs, which is when you can pick your own call sign. The FCC works to coordinate all U.S. Non-military communications interests with the International Telecommunications Union. And one thing that's in all the regulations for all the countries, the FCC has it that they can inspect an amateur station at any time. Now, if you refuse them entry, you'll probably lose your license. So that's the trade-off. How many licenses can you have? One amateur radio license per person. But remember that your amateur radio license is 2 parts. It's a station license and it's an operator's license. So it's two licenses in one. If you'd like to read the Part 97 regulations, the American Radio Relay League has this URL where you can download the PDF and you read it along. But if you want to read it at night, it's a great cure for insomnia because it's written in governmentese. It's there. You can make reference to it as well. One thing you're going to want to do, and this is a change over the past couple of years. It always used to be you wanted to make sure that the FCC had your current address. Well, you still need to give them your current address, but even more important, give them your current email address, because they've moved to electronic communications, and their communications is likely to come to you via email. And if they have an incorrect email address for you, if your email gets bounced, then they can revoke your license, revoke your station license, revoke your operator license. So make sure that you keep your information current. And where do you keep it current? That's at the FCC's Universal Licensing System website. So amateur licenses, we talked about that you have to have the email correct. They're good for a term of 10 years. If you were to, at the end of 10 years, let your license lapse by forgetting to renew it, there's a grace period of 2 years. And so during that 2-year period, you can go on the ULS website and type in a renewal request, and then you can get your call sign back and get your license back. You cannot operate during that grace period, however. But you do have 2 years after the 10 years where you can without having to take a new test. The ULS database, the Universal Licensing System, that is the king. And when you take your test, your technician test, and pass, and it gets processed in, it's when your name shows up in the database that you are licensed. It was back in the day when I was first licensed, everything was done by the U.S. Postal System. and the test was set in and processed. It took me 6 weeks to get my first amateur radio license, and I was at the post box every day. Where is my envelope? Where is it? Finally it came. They don't do that anymore. In the database, there's a way that you can click on and you can download your license as a PDF, and it'll say official copy. When it says that, then you can print that out, and that's your license right there. But as long as you are in the database, you are licensed. The federal registration number, we mentioned that before. It's the key to identifying you in the FCC system. And I mentioned that an individual can have only one license. But if you and a group of 3 other friends decide, hey, we want to form our own club, okay, and we want to get a call sign for our club, as long as you've got 4 members, and one of those is going to be the trustee, then you can get a club station license from the FCC. But you have to have 4 people. You can't get one on your own. And this is what the universal licensing system looks like when you go to the URL down at the bottom. It's not that difficult to navigate. They've added another website that you link to for payment. It's $35 to the FCC for your 10-year license. So that, that's a pittance in this day and age. So for us, hams, we still have to know that the FCC is the sheriff. And they are cracking down on abuses in the amateur radio spectrum. They just recently issued a ham a $10,000 fine, revoked the license and all of that. So the FCC has the power to do that. Hams try to keep the bands safe and legal and everything on our own, but it's the FCC that has the ultimate authority. Now, in the rules, you'll find that there are now, today, 3 classes of license, amateur radio license in the United States. The beginning license is the technician. The intermediate license is called the general class, and we'll have a general class online course with Zoom and YouTube starting in January 2026, so you can stay tuned for that. And then amateur extra, that's the very top of the license classes. And we have incentive licensing in the United States, and that means you get additional frequency privileges as you go up. And so for the general class, you get HF, high frequency privileges, a wide range of those. And then for the extra class, you get an additional 250 kilohertz of high frequency spectrum. But it's where the DX lives, so it's really good. So technician, general, and extra, those are the 3. There used to be other classes of license, novice, conditional licenses, tech plus, and advanced. They still exist, and people still have them and are renewing them. That's allowed, but they, for whatever reason, haven't upgraded. But to start out now, just 3 possibilities. Okay, all ready for some questions? So remember our 3-second rule. Try to wait 3 seconds before giving me your best answer here. All right, here we go. So which of the following is part of the basis and purpose of the amateur radio service?
Charlie.
Advancing skills in the technical and communications phases of the radio art. And which agency regulates and enforces the rules? You got to get this.
Charlie.
Yeah, the FCC, Federal Communications Commission. And how many operator primary station license grants may be held by any one person?
Alpha.
Yep, just one per person. So what proves that the FCC has issued an operator primary license grant?
Charlie.
Remember I said the database is king anymore. If your name appears in the database, then you are licensed. And people can look you up in the database. So for which license classes are new licenses currently available from the FCC?
Delta,
Delta,
Technician, General, and Amateur Extra. And what may happen if the FCC is unable to reach you by email?
Bravo,
Revocation. They can revoke your license, which remember is a station license and an operator license. So yeah. And which of the following can result in revocation of the station license or suspension of the operator license? Just another way to look at it.
Bravo,
Bravo.
Yeah, failure to provide and maintain a correct email address. You won't get both of those questions, but you make it one or the other. So, what is the normal term for an FCC-issued amateur radio license?
Arlie,
10 years. Yeah, if somebody's got a radio playing in the background, please turn it down. So, what is the grace period for renewal if an amateur license expires?
Alpha,
Alpha,
You have a 2-year grace period. And how soon after passing the exam of your first amateur radio license may you transmit?
Charlie,
The database is king, so as soon as your operator station license grade appears in the database. And if your license has expired and is still within the allowable grace period, may you continue to transmit?
Delta,
Delta.
Yeah, no, you must wait until the license has been renewed. Yeah, you have to stay off the air. So when must the station and its records be available for FCC inspection?
Bravo,
Bravo.
Yeah,
Bravo.
at any time upon request by an FCC representative. Now, they're not likely to come knocking at your door at midnight, so don't worry about that. You're not likely to ever meet an FCC representative, but they have the authority. So which of the following is a requirement for the issuance of a club station license grant?
Bravo,
Bravo.
Yeah, you must have at least 4 club members. All right, moving on. Section 7.2, bans and privileges. So, as I mentioned, the FCC has the ultimate authority, but hams try to police themselves. I'm just going to go ahead and mute everybody in the Zoom classroom there. All right. And a couple ways we do that. We have frequency coordinators. So those are folks that make sure that the repeater frequencies don't interfere with other stations in the vicinity. And then we use the band plans. Remember, those are the gentleman's agreements that we voluntarily observe, but we try to make sure that signals of certain types, modulation modes are on certain frequency ranges. Those are the things that we do to help police the bands ourselves. Here in the southeast of the United States, the frequency coordinators are the Southeastern Repeater Association. There's their URL down below, and they do a fine job, but if you're in a different area, I'm sure there is a frequency coordinator organization in your area as well. And the organization is made up of repeater owners and operators. Some of the bands that we use, we have to share. And when hams have a secondary allocation to frequencies, they must protect the primary users. And this is especially true with radio location and navigation devices. So just know that we have to give way. And if somebody comes on the air and we're secondary, we have to QSY. We have to change frequency. We have to use the big knob and move away. We have to let them do their thing. So I want you to get familiar with the color chart. And if you haven't already seen them, they're the ARRL color charts that have all of the frequency bands that amateurs can use and have all of the license classes and the various frequency ranges there. One question that you're going to have to answer, you can take a look, is can technicians use single sideband on the high frequency bands. And remember, high frequency bands are from 3 to 30 megahertz. So is it possible for text to use single sideband? And the answer is yes. On one band, the 10-meter band, from a little space from 28.3 to 28.5 megahertz, technicians are allowed to do single sideband voice, data, Morse code, and so you have pretty much full privileges in that area with a maximum output power of 200 watts. That's a limitation for technicians. But yes, you can do single sideband voice on 10 meters, and we'll go take a look at that after the break on the air, see if anything's going on there. Remember, we started out with the pyramids, with the Ohm's law and the Watt's law and wavelength and frequency. I want you to remember wavelength is 300 divided by the frequency in megahertz. Or if you want to know the frequency, it's 300 divided by the wavelength in meters. Keep this in mind, because for some test questions, this can help you puzzle out what the right answer is. So technician class restrictions. For high frequency bands, technicians have additional privileges on the 80 meter, 40 meter, and 15 meter Morse code only, CW only. It's the old novice CW allocations. So it could be fun if you want to do Morse code. You have the capability of doing that. And we mentioned earlier 10 meter, the subband there, you can do voice, you can do data, you can do radio teletype, you can do Morse code. So there are mode restrictions on VHF and UHF above 50 megahertz. The only bands that are divided in any way are 6 meters, 2 meters, and 1.25 meters. We'll talk about this. So both 6 meters and 2 meters, let me turn on my laser pointer because I'm not sure you can see that. I was pointing there. Now you can. So both 6 meters and 2 meters have small CW only subbands at the very lowest end of the band. And so that restriction is you can only have Morse code transmissions in those small subbands. The 1.25 meter band, or 220 megahertz, it has an area where only data signals for fixed message forwarding systems are permitted. That's at the low end of that band. Otherwise, for VHF and UHF, there are no mode restrictions above the 70 centimeter band. So, but you need to know about these because they're test questions. So for mode restrictions, the bottom of the 6 and 2 meter bands, Morse code only, and the bottom of the 1.25 meter band, data signals only. And I mentioned for high frequencies, technician class, they have the option to work Morse code on 80, 40, and 15, and other modes on 10 meters with a maximum output power of 200 watts. These are the old incandescent 100-watt light bulbs. So 2 light bulbs on HF, all right? But for VHF and above with your technician class license, you can do 15 light bulbs, 1,500 watts. You have full legal limit authority on VHF and above. So when you're calling CQ, we talked about this before when we were talking about operating, that you always want to listen first, listen. Ask, is the frequency in use? Is the frequency in use, please? Whiskey 4, Echo, Echo, Yankee, or whatever your call sign is. Or if in Morse code, you send QRL question mark. Okay, frequency is clear. Also, make sure you use the color chart. Make sure you're operating in a frequency range that you are authorized to operate in. If you can do all of that, then you're doing good. You're going to be able to operate just fine. My picture down there is, that's a citizens band frequency, 27 megahertz. So that would, you're not authorized to operate down there, all right, at least with amateur radio equipment. So how do I know that a band is open? Well, listen. You can listen along and see if you're hearing signals. You can also check what we call spotting websites. Here's one that I kind of like, DX Heat, that gives you information about who's on what bands from what country. People, after they work, make a contact with another station, sometimes their logging software will automatically send what is known as a spot out to the internet, and websites like this aggregate those. This also has a UTC clock and also information about propagation conditions at the present time. So you can use the spotting websites to know if a band is open. If you know Morse code, you can check for beacon signals. These are 100-watt radios that have been positioned around the world by the Northern California DX Foundation. And they operate on a fixed schedule, which you can download from the internet. And then if you can hear a signal on a particular frequency, it's a Morse code signal, and it's a certain time, oh, that's coming from Japan. I have propagation open to Japan. So that's another way that you can know whether propagation is open to a particular location. And you can use online resources. WhisperNet is one. PSK Reporter is another, which will tell you where signals are propagating at the present time. Oh-ho, questions? So what is the FCC Part 97 definition of a beacon? Okay, I didn't probably... Remember the Northern California DX Foundation, those beacon stations? The 100-watt radios that are automated? Okay, now you know.
Delta.
Yeah, it's an amateur station transmitting communications for the purposes of observing propagation or related experimental activities. Define your terms, Gary. And which of the following entities recommends transmit receive channels and other parameters for auxiliary and repeater stations?
Bravo.
Those are frequency coordinators. So here in this area, it's the Southeastern Repeater Association. And who selects a frequency coordinator?
Charlie.
It's those who own repeaters or are eligible to own repeaters, so amateur operators in a local or regional area whose stations are eligible to be repeater or aux stations. And which of the following frequency ranges are available for phone, think single sideband operation, by technician licensees?
Charlie.
Yeah, that's at 28.3 to 28.5 megahertz. And which frequency is in the 6-meter amateur band?
Bravo.
Yep, 52.525 is in the 6-meter band. You could use that 300 divided by 6 to give you an idea. All right. Which amateur band includes 146.52 megahertz?
Delta.
2 meters, yep, that's the national calling frequency for FM, 146.52 megahertz. And how may amateurs use the 219 to 220 megahertz segment of the 1.25 meter band?
Delta.
Yeah, it's the fixed digital message forwarding systems. That's that restriction. On which HF bands does a technician class operator have phone privileges?
Charlie.
Delta.
Not Delta, not Charlie. It is Bravo. Yes, 10 meters only. Phone privileges, single sideband, 10-meter band only. And which of the following VHF UHF band segments are limited to CW only? Yeah, we said there was a restriction on the 6-meter band and the 2-meter band down at the very bottom. Yeah, that's 50 to 50.1 and 144 to 144.1 CW only. So how are U.S. amateurs restricted in segments of bands where the amateur radio service is secondary?
Alpha?
It is alpha. We can't talk to them. We have to avoid them. We must change our frequency, and yep, they are primary, we are secondary. 70 centimeters is one of those bands. So what is the maximum peak envelope power output for technician class operators in their HF band segments?
Alpha?
Alpha.
Yeah, 2 light bulbs, 200 watts. And except for some specific restrictions, what is the maximum peak envelope power for technician class operators using frequencies above 30 megahertz?
Delta.
Delta.
15 light bulbs. All right. Keeping going here. International rules. We mentioned them earlier, the International Telecommunications Union. I'm going to go mute the classroom here again. Please excuse me there. So the International Telecommunications Union, they're based in Geneva, Switzerland, and it's an arm of the United Nations. And they're the ones that are globally responsible for coordinating frequencies and modes and operations of all of the communications spectrum around the world. And of course, the FCC represents the United States with the ITU, but there are other organizations who represent other countries as well. And there are regions, the ITU regions, since they're in Geneva, Switzerland, which is here in Europe. Region 1 is Europe and Africa. Then you follow the sun. We're in Region 2, which is North, Central, and South America. No, parts of Antarctica as well, I can't say it. And then Region 3 is Asia and the Pacific region over here. So 3 regions, and it's important because there can be different frequency allocations for amateurs in different ITU regions. There are also ITU zones. These are not so much important, but you just need to know that they exist. So as I mentioned, in the regions, frequency allocations may be different. Band plans also may be different in other ITU regions. And some U.S. licenses are issued for folks like in Saipan or Guam, but they're outside of Region 2, so they may have their own operating regulations different from here in the continental United States. Other radio services may share amateur frequencies, so remember, we have to protect them. To operate in a foreign country, it must be authorized by that country. It can be authorized by treaty, an international treaty, or it could be authorized individually. But always the Post and Telecommunications Authority in that country has to have given authority to do that. If you happen to be on a U.S. flag vessel, and that may be harder to find than you think, in international waters, then U.S. licensed hams may operate, but you have to use that the location where you are in the ITU region to use their frequency allocations. And you always must have the captain's approval. So don't think you're going to go on a cruise and set up your ham radio station. They probably will not allow you to do that. Permitted communications on the amateur radio bands is communications incidental to the purposes of the amateur radio service and remarks of a personal nature. This is most important in international communications. You don't want to get involved in politics and stuff like that, so just keep it light. Prohibited communications, that can occur when a country informs the ITU that amateur radio communications are prohibited within that country. Now, at the moment, there are no prohibited countries. However, North Korea has no amateur radio operators. People have operated in North Korea. We'll talk about that coming up, but it's a very rare, a very special thing. As we mentioned, on a U.S. flag vessel, with the permission of the captain, you can operate. But if your vessel is registered in Liberia, no, that doesn't work. All right, come back to me just for a second, if you would, Marion. I love amateur radio. You know that. I get excited about it. And one thing I like about amateur radio is if you can go to the big ham fests. There's in February coming up in Orlando, Florida, is Hamcation. In next May in Dayton, Ohio, is Hamvention. Did I get that right? Hamvention, yeah. And in Germany, in Europe, in Friedrichshafen, Germany, they always have their own ham radio event there. It's in June, if I'm not mistaken. And it's always fun to go to these, and you can meet your heroes. I'm not a hero. I'm just a middling guy. But there are guys or gals who have really advanced the radio art, who have operated on de-expeditions from very rare locations, who have undergone a lot of adverse conditions to put amateur radio on the air, and you can see them and meet them and talk with them at these various conventions. So I mentioned that in North Korea, it generally has been prohibited for operation of amateur radio. But in the past, there were some rare occasions. Come on back to the laptop. So this gentleman, Marty Lane, his call sign is OH2BH. He used to work for Nokia and setting up cell systems around the world. And so they called him into North Korea to set up a cellular system for them. And he said, great. But while I'm here, could I operate amateur radio? And since he happened to know the minister, he got authority and was able to, for a limited period of time, to operate as P51BH, a very rare contact with North Korea. So they did allow him to do it. And so you can only communicate with a foreign country when they allow it. Well, Marty Lane has been on so many de-expeditions around the world. I did get a chance to go to Friedrichshafen in Germany. And at the airport, who should be walking in? But Marty Lane. And so I got a chance to get a photo with him, one of my heroes, one of the great de-expeditioners in ham radio. All right, here's some questions. So what types of international communications are FCC licensed amateur radio stations permitted to make?
Alpha.
Yeah, communications incidental to the purposes of amateur radio. Your signal strength is this, it's clear, et cetera, and remarks of a personal character. So from which of the following locations may an FCC licensed amateur station transmit?
Delta.
Yeah, from any vessel or craft located in international waters and documented or registered in the United States. So maybe you've got a friend who's got a yacht. You can go out in international waters. Be maritime mobile. So with which countries are FCC licensed amateur radio stations prohibited from exchanging communications?
Bravo. Alpha.
Well, read that carefully. Yeah, any country whose administrator has notified the ITU, not the ARRL. But yeah. Okay, call signs. This is something that's going to be important for you. Because when you get your new license, and you will get your new license, the FCC will issue you a call sign. And they issue them sequentially. Call signs always have a prefix and a suffix separated by a region number. So in my case, my prefix is a W, my suffix is EEY, and my region number is region 4. Now, sometimes you'll hear people talk about prefixes as being W4, but that's okay. For the purposes of the test and whatnot, this is what we talk about. Shorter call signs are sought after. And so when you get your amateur extra license, and you can do it, then you're eligible to get shorter call signs, which work very well in DX pileups and contesting, things like that. But when you're a new ham, your eligibility is for 2x3 call signs, 2 letters, 3 numbers, or 3 letters at the suffix, and a region number in the middle. So this is 2 by 3, and 1 by 3s. Those are usually eligible for technician classes. It depends on where they are right now in issuing licenses. This is a great website to know about. And there is a possibility after you get your sequential license, if you don't like it, you can apply to the FCC for a call sign that you would pick, as long as it's a 1 by 3 or a 2 by 3 with your technician class. Now, as you advance up, you can get different call sign formats. Here's a great resource, this URL, ae7q.com. He does sampling. He gets a copy of the database when the FCC publishes it, and he can tell you what call signs are available and what the last call sign that was issued in your region. So again, technicians may select from what they call groups C and D. Those are 1 by 3 or 2 by 3. So this would be eligible W4XXX or KM4XXX. Those would be possibilities when you get your technician license if you want to change. Club stations also, we said you have to have 4 members, and you can be issued a call sign by the FCC, and then you can go back and apply for a vanity call sign. Maybe if you have got an extra class trustee, you can get a shorter call sign. Now, the really short call signs are held by the FCC for use with special events. And these call signs can be reissued by different special events, but just this last month, the Route 66 special event was going on, and they had all sorts of different 1 by 1s. W6A, W6B, W6C, etc. You can get a certificate if you worked all of them. And that'll be coming around probably next year as well. So these are 1 by 1 call signs, usually restricted for special event stations. But you could, with your club, you could do a special event. And you could apply to the FCC to get a special event call sign, and yeah, they routinely approve them. All right, last questions for tonight. Who may select a desired call sign under the vanity call sign rules?
Delta.
Yeah, any licensed amateur. So you get your technician license, yes, you can do that. Which of the following is a valid technician class call sign format?
Alpha.
That's at 2 by 3, KF1XXX, 2 by 3. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of Chapter 7, but it's not the end tonight, because what I'd like to do is, after we take a 5-minute intermission, is come back and do a live demo. These can bite us, but okay, a live demo of HF radio. But let's go ahead and take 5 minutes, get up and move around, stretch, and we'll see you on the other side. And we're back. Oh, we're having all sorts of fun here tonight. So we're going to do a little trial here to see if we can listen on some HF radio. I had a all monitoring system all set up and whatnot, and it just crapped out. But okay, we're going to plan B. We're still going to do it. So let's go on over to the demo area and see what we can come up with. Hi. Okay, here we are. So I mentioned before, for HF, I have a Flex 6600 radio. It lives downstairs in my workshop down below us. We have a Flex Maestro controller over here in the corner. And for it to be a little easier for you to see, we have it up here on the big monitor as well. Now we are on the 20-meter band, or 14 megahertz, you can see up here at the moment. And I have no ability to monitor other than the speaker coming out of the little Maestro here. But Bruce is going to open up the audio for the radio so we can at least hear some static. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go change to the 10-meter band. And let me go grab my glasses because I can't see a thing. Okay. Sorry about that. But I wanted to start out here. So right there is 28.3 megahertz. 28.3. This is the lowest end of the 10-meter spectrum that technicians can operate on. We talked about that before. Up to 28,500. So we go to the radio, we go to the big knob. We can go up. The signals you're going to hear in a second are birdies. Interference from something going on in my area here. I'm not sure what. So this is the 10-meter band. And if you remember, we talked about it when we were talking about propagation, that it's a daytime band when there are a lot of sunspots. Well, it's dark here in South Carolina now, and so I did not expect to see any signal activity. That might have been something down there. Oh yeah. I'll turn it up any louder than that. So I was mentioning that you listen. I was listening on net on 40 meters this morning, and some guys were talking about last night they were hearing signals on 10 meters at night. Let's see. It's kind of unusual, though. All right. Well, we'll move on. Let's move on to the 20-meter band. Okay. We'll let you go, guy. All right. 20 meters. There might be a chance. Now, I'm a sideband guy. I like voice. Well, there was a signal there. They're very weak. We're connected to DX Commander vertical antenna. Oh, there's another stronger signal over here.
Roger, you're 5-9 here in Waxahachie, Texas.
Station in Texas.
Yeah, but great signal from you. 73, have fun. Kilo 1, Charlie Lima.
Okay, I'm not sure who they're working. I can't hear the other station that they're working. What I'd like to do is let me just dial down here. I'm going to go. So this is all the single sideband portion of 20 meters. Now you won't have frequency allocations on 20 meters until you get your general class license. But I want you to hear some other signals as well. So I'm going to go down to 14074. Hear that cacophony? So we're at 14,074. These are FT8 signals. We talked about the mode FT8 and the WSJTX software. This is a mode that has taken ham radio by storm. This is another way you can tell if a band is open, is if you can hear FT8 signals. So without the software to decode it, we don't know who the stations are there or where they're from or whatnot, but that's what FT8 signals sound like. Let's keep going down to the band. Morse code. A something for my Morse code is rusty. So in the lower part of the bands is usually where you'll find most of the Morse code signals. So there's two stations going back and forth communicating with each other. I could go to the CW mode and we'd have a narrower filter, but I've just left it for a single sideband. All right, I don't see any radio teletype signals at the moment. All right, that's FT8. All right, let's go to the 40 meter band, which should be pretty open at the moment.
Same here, bud, because this is the best night I've had all week so far. Let me pass you to Norm. Norm, you got low.
So I've parked on 14,305 just to see if anybody is there. I'm listening. Oh, I'm too high. 14,305 is out of the ham band. Yeah, that's not going to let me do that. Oh, and let's go to lower sideband because we're below 9 megahertz. Gary. Okay, we are lower sideband. Okay, good. Just want to see if we can, yeah, okay. Is the frequency in use? Is the frequency in use, please? Is the frequency in use? Is the frequency in use, please? Whiskey 4, Echo, Echo, Yankee. CQ, CQ, CQ for a demonstration of amateur radio. CQ, CQ, CQ. Here is Whiskey 4, Echo, Echo, Yankee. Whiskey 4, Echo, Echo, Yankee, calling CQ for a demonstration of amateur radio. So we listened. We asked if the frequency was in use. We're calling CQ with 100 watts. CQ, CQ, CQ. Whiskey 4, Echo, Echo, Yankee. Whiskey 4, Echo, Echo, Yankee, calling CQ40, CQ40. Whiskey 4, Echo, Echo, Yankee. Whiskey 4, Echo, Echo, Yankee, with a demonstration of amateur radio, please. It's like fishing. Sometimes you get a bite, sometimes you don't. One more. CQ40, CQ40, Whiskey 4, Echo, Echo, Yankee. Whiskey 4, Echo, Echo, Yankee, calling CQ40, trying to demonstrate amateur radio. Whiskey 4, Echo, Echo, Yankee, calling CQ and listening. Well, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Well, I want to thank you anyway. We'll maybe try this again next week and see if we have any better luck. But until then, are there any comments or questions before we go? Let me go back over to the pod. Comments or questions from anyone? All right. We're early tonight. You notice I'm getting you out early. All right, until next week, we'll be talking about more regulations. You don't have to get your calculator out too much. And let me say, 73. See you next week.